Hey, financial freedom seekers, Simon Dixon here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how to access the opportunities of the rich and wealthy. No doubt you will know that most investment opportunities, there are some investment opportunities that are available to all, and there are others that are reserved just for the wealthy. If you're from the US, you have accredited investor rules. If you're from other countries, you have qualified investor, professional investor, sophisticated investor, high net worth investor. Everyone has their slight definition. And the reason the Bitcoin and crypto markets are in turmoil right now is because many people took the investment opportunities that are normally available to the rich and wealthy and made them accessible to retail, but without disclosing any of the risks or doing anything that's required so that people can manage effectively. And the difference between those that just got hurt or affected, their portfolio was affected, such as myself from the recent markets, is that it was a small allocation of their wealth, and it was the part dedicated to risk capital, whereas many others were completely lied to, misrepresented to putting their life savings or their retirement funds and everything into one of these high-risk investment opportunities. Right. So with that in mind, I pretty much dedicated the second half of my career, the last over 10 years now, decade, to trying to expand bringing the investment opportunities that are wealthy to people that weren't quite wealthy yet. That involved lobbying regulators and all sorts of stuff early on, like Coinbase, Kraken, Bitstamp, Bitfinex, any of the different things. And it took us 3 years to change securities laws in the UK to allow non-high net worth investors to invest in such companies. The challenge was it was only available to those in the UK for UK companies. There was very few Bitcoin companies in the UK, so then we had to expand, and we ended up, registering with the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, and then they said you can only work with high net worth investors. And so then we started investing in broker dealers and to change the laws, securities laws, in the US, where they introduced the Jobs Act from the changes that we made in the UK, but they got it even worse this time. They essentially made it where any investment opportunity had to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it would take months and months and months, and then they could offer it to non-accredited by doing a mini IPO known as Regulation A+, and various other things that came from it. All good, but none of them were game-changing. It always came back to the companies pretty much just didn't want the risk of taking on retail investors. They couldn't, they didn't have the resources to do it. And so every time, and so at Bank to the Future, we still work with high net worth investors because some of the opportunities would only be available to some people, and so we make it available as much as we can, but the sexy opportunities are always reserved to high net worth investors under full disclosure and everything around that, and it's just the way of the world. And when you have an event like what happened in 2022 in the crypto markets, a bunch of retail lose their money, they all complain to regulators, and then regulators say, okay, we'll just make this only available to the rich and wealthy again. And so the retail investors enforce it upon themselves because they overexposed themselves, they invested too much, they blew up their life savings. Some crook came along and misrepresented the investment, pretending that they were helping the little guy while taking their funds, misrepresenting the risks. And you have, some fraudster always comes along every time and then ruins the opportunity, and all the retail lose their money, lobby regulators reverse and go back to, we'll just make it available for those that can afford to lose the money. Okay, so that's the cycle. It's been the test of time. It's happened ever since the 1920s, every single pump and dump cycle, and it always ends in the same thing, that retail don't get exposure to the investment opportunities because they don't implement the risk of money management, and then they complain. So firstly, make sure you go back to my videos just before we go into the main topic of how to access them. Firstly, you have to if you've been blown up financially, check out my video called How to Recover from Financial Disaster. I think you'll find that very useful. If you are in building mode, then check out the video that I created on New Year's Eve, how to make 2023 the best financial year for you. That gives you practical insights on how I went from deep in debt to achieving the level of financial freedom that I never imagined was possible at the time. So here's the spoiler alert. Let me give you the answer right now. The easiest and best way to get access to the investment opportunities of the rich is to become high net worth. Sorry if that's a massive, massive anticlimax, but let me give you some reasons why I tell you that. It is because years ago, I identified myself as somebody that could never be a high net worth investor. And I went through what I'm going to share with you today that I think will give you way, way, way more value than anything I could say around how to get those opportunities when you're not high net worth. I would like you to go through a process that I went to, and I'm going to outline that process, and I'm going to share some practical guidelines on how you can go through the same and some personal stories from me, so that hopefully I can inspire. I'm not telling these stories for any other reason than I want to inspire and impress upon you to expand your vision about what's possible for you and to become a high net worth investor. Now that is a very, very different identity. Believing that you can become a high net worth investor versus how do I access the investment opportunities of the high net worth investor. One is a goal-driven exercise, and I'll walk you through the exercise that I went through that made all the difference for me. The other is an identity that you've created for yourself that has negative empowering beliefs that you need to somehow get access to something that is outside of your control because you are not a high net worth investor. Right. So let me take you through the process. What I had to do, and I'll give you the process and then I'll go a bit deeper into each one and a story from how I implemented it, so hopefully it can work for you. The first thing I had to do is I had to define who I was. We all have an identity, subconscious or conscious. We identify ourselves as something. And so the first one is to define that. The second step is to expand your identity of who you are. I'll go a bit deeper into it. The third step is to feel, act, and believe consistent with that identity. The fourth step is to plan how to get there. And the fifth step is to hold yourself accountable to that identity. So let me go through each one. Everybody, if you define yourself as a retail investor, then that identity becomes who you are. Let me explain the importance of this, whether it's subconscious or conscious. I hold a belief that wealth creation is 80% psychology, 20% strategy. Everybody wants the strategy and the shortcut, which I give. I give you the exact strategies that I use, but 80% of it, what is the difference between somebody that knows exactly how to dollar cost average, how to buy Bitcoin, how to have a portfolio for a change of empire, how to have a portfolio for the existing empire, and how to have a portfolio for the exit, which I cover in many of my videos. You probably know that right now, but how many of you are doing it? Because the difference is the psychology side, 100%. I know exactly how to be fit and healthy. Right now, I'm on the mode because my psychology, I've created a new identity for myself. So your identity shapes the actions that you take. What you believe you are is what you essentially act every day. So if you see yourself as a retail investor, then you take the actions of retail investors. If you identify yourself, whatever you identify yourself as is essentially the main actions that you become. So if you don't want to be a retail investor and access the investment opportunities of the high net worth investor, you need to identify yourself as a high net worth investor that is in a transition phase. And so a high net worth investor in most jurisdictions and in Bank to the Future is defined as somebody that has $1 million of net worth. So your goal is to get $1 million of net worth. Now, if you identify yourself as somebody that can achieve that goal, you create a cycle of taking different, developing different beliefs, which then leads to you taking different actions. When you take different actions, you get different results. When you get different results, you reinforce your beliefs. Let me give you an example. I remember when I was at school, my grades were awful. I wasn't a very intelligent person, but I was awesome at maths. And I asked myself, why was I good at maths? Something slightly more to it. Maybe it was because my father was really good at maths, and then it created an identity in myself that I come from the genes of someone that's good at maths. And maybe armed with that belief, I really enjoyed the maths class more. And maybe I had a great teacher, which I did, and I related to my maths teacher more than I did all the other subjects. And so I was excited to come home and do my maths. I was excited by the fact that within our family, my father was good at maths, and that enhanced my relationship with my father. And therefore, I did my homework, and I identified and believed that I was good at maths, and therefore I did everything that one needs to do to be good at maths. When I look at all my other subjects, I hated them, I didn't like them, I was a rebel, I didn't do my homework, I was flicking ink on the back of the teachers, just being a dickhead. And therefore I wasn't good at those. So I didn't identify myself as intelligent, but I identified myself as good at maths. One thing that my father did, my father sadly passed away, but he's still with me in spirit. On his deathbed, he said that he will always live on in me and within me. So I see myself as an extension of my father. And one of the things he did for me as a child is he told me something that was complete bullshit, but I really believed it and held it as an identity. And that was, he said to me, Simon, you're a Dixon, you can do anything. And my father was someone that went from rags and riches and then lost all of his money and blowed up all of his money in the stock market. And so I experienced what it was like subconsciously as a child to live in, complete, very, very means, believe that my father believing that he could become a high net worth investor, becoming a high net worth investor, and then blowing everything up. And it taught me the exact mix of who I am today. It allowed me to install the belief that was possible to go from nothing to wealthy. And it also installed the belief that if you don't risk manage, you can blow everything up. And do you think that that's the identity of who I am today when you watch my videos? Absolutely, those beliefs were there. But he said to me, Simon, you're a Dixon, you can do anything. And I grew up as an ignorant child with the belief that being a Dixon was like being a king or something like that. I took it literally as a child, and it installed with me the belief that anything was possible because I felt like I came from royal family or good blood. And it was nothing. It was just something that he completely made up and installed an identity into me as a child. And I took it with me for the rest of my life, and it shaped my actions based upon that identity. And so I remember changing my identity at school. When I went to university, I said, I am an intelligent person. So what did I do? Step 2, I expanded my identity. And so at school, I said, I am an intelligent person. And I studied like crazy. I did the 3rd step, which is feel, act like somebody that's intelligent. What do they do? Well, I used university for all it was. I had the party animal, I had this belief inside of me that I did everything, but I was always the first up. I studied harder than anyone else, and I was committed to getting a first-class economics degree and doing a master's in economics. Now, that became from not because I was naturally intelligent, it's because I took the actions of an intelligent person. And so, yeah, maybe you have to work harder than somebody that's naturally intelligent, but taking the actions of an intelligent person by expanding your vision about what you believe about yourself, and then feeling, acting, and believing that you take the actions of an intelligent person. It worked for me. I got a first in economics. That reinforced my belief by expanding that I was an intelligent person. That made me more confident in giving lectures on banking reform. I didn't like what I learned in economics. And that gave me more confidence to be able to stand up to the resistance that you get, and it grows upon you, the identity. Now, how quick could you change your identity by analyzing and going through this process? So step one is identify yourself. Now, I also remember when my father lost all of his money, he asked me a question. It was such a painful experience because for him, he was born into nothing. He was born in the UK when it was at war. He was hiding under the table while bombs were coming around. He lived with six other siblings. But he had a belief that his father gave him. His father was a bus driver, my grandfather, who unfortunately I never met. But his belief was, you're the seventh son of the seventh son. So my grandfather was the seventh son. My dad was the seventh son. He was the youngest of the siblings. And he came with a belief that that made him different. And that belief made him different because he expanded his vision. He was the only one in the family that broke away and became a self-made millionaire. And so what happens when you give yourself a new identity and then expand your identity? You find all these different weird things. I'll give you a silly example. When my father lost all of his money, I remember giving myself, it was so painful. I wanted so badly to figure out. And he asked me, son, I don't understand what happened to my money. My money, where did it go? Who's got that money? I had this big balance and now it's just gone. Where is it? And he asked me that question, son, can you figure out what happened to my money? And I created a new identity for myself in that moment. I said, this is silly, but I call myself a money master. That money master then led to me getting really good at maths, studying economics. And then once I studied economics, mastering economics. Once I mastered in economics, I then got a job. I started as a T-boy, as a stockbroker, worked my way up, became a stockbroker, became a market maker, worked in corporate finance and investment banking, studied Austrian economics, quit my job, and then started to feel like an act. I read like 100 different books on all of the greatest investors of all time. YouTube wasn't even around then. The internet wasn't accessible, so I had to read all the physical books. I started getting all my professional qualifications in financial advisory, securities and investments, all sorts of stuff. I started giving lectures on the subject as my vision and expansion of me being a banking expert. I then started to identify myself as a monetary reformer. That later led me to go into the first Bitcoin conference, and then I identified myself as a Bitcoiner. I invested in Bitcoin at $3. I invested in over 100 companies in the industry, created a company that allowed other people, Bank to the Future, to invest in such companies and started expanding what was possible. All based upon that belief and identity of calling myself a money master, as stupid as that sounds. So I went from someone that identified myself as somebody that didn't know how to manage money to somebody that was just good at maths to being a money master. And that completely changed the actions that I took, feel, act, and identify myself. So I want you to understand the importance of the identity that you give yourself. If you consider yourself a retail investor, you've got to expand that to somebody that is a high net worth investor in transition phase. And then you've got to study the work of the mentors, the people. Subscribe to this channel. I'll keep giving daily updates. What am I doing right now in the gym telling you about these crazy monetary and financial stories? Well, what I did is I decided that I want to identify myself as somebody that is fit, that is healthy, I visualized my before and after photo, and I've said this is the goal that I want to set myself. So I set myself a plan. Remember, that's the fourth step. Set yourself a strategy. Now, here's the difference between a plan and a real plan. A plan is something that comes from somebody that has previously achieved that goal that you're actually looking for. It's not a financial planner or a banker that's trying to sell you a financial product that's not wealthy themselves. It's using the fact that you live in the information age today and you can access the vast wealth of information in books and YouTube videos of the richest and the wealthiest in the world. I'll continue on this video to share with you And if you go back to my video, how to make this the best financial year ever, you'll understand that I created contribution as part of my financial plan. I said I have to go from spending money to savings to investment to contribution. And therefore, the more I made in my, the less I spent, the more I had for my savings, the more I was able to invest, and the more I was able to contribute to the world by having the level of financial freedom where I can just decide to do shit like this because I want to, not because I have to. Okay, so that's a bit of a deviation as well. But you put together a plan for yourself, and that plan, look at previous videos. I've always talked about people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. Put together a 10-year plan, and then you find out that the 1-year plan can often work a lot better. But look at the videos I created yesterday about why the rich don't focus on dollars. You can go back, set yourself a binge exercise, watch all these videos, subscribe to the channel, like this video, help me out. As well, give back in that sense. You can put together a plan for yourself, a decade-long plan to become a high net worth investor. What I think you'll find is that by having a longer term plan, you'll get there faster than you ever thought possible. That's essentially how it worked for me. I put together that 10-year plan and I got there a lot faster than I could ever imagine. Because I experienced my father going from rags to riches to losing it all. I got that combination of experiential learning. When we do things, we learn a lot better. I could tell you about this, but if you're not doing it, you haven't learned. You could say, Simon, dollar cost averaging, that's simple. But are you dollar cost averaging? If you're not dollar cost averaging, then you're not doing. And if you're not doing, you haven't had the experiential learning. If you haven't been an experiential learner, you'll be a dabbler, you'll be a talker, you'll be a retail investor for the rest of your life. And so my hope is that by expanding your identity of what's possible, by simply identifying who you are right now and being honest, then expanding that identity, then feeling, acting, and believing that that's possible for you, then creating a plan, and then holding yourself accountable. So why do I create these videos? Well, I said, if I want to be that person that works out every day and is fit and healthy and can transform my health and what is important to me at this stage in my life, then I need to hold myself accountable. So I go on YouTube. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I go on YouTube and I tell everyone, I'll give you a video every day as long as you hold me accountable to working out each and every day. And if I'm not working out, you know that maybe you need to hold me accountable. Accountability, there's times when I wake up and I don't want to go to the gym, but I know that I said that I've made this commitment. So tell as many people as possible about your new identity and who you're going to become and how you're going to get there. Why? Because the society frowns upon those that say things and don't do. You're known as a liar, or you're known as somebody that doesn't achieve your goal. It's the pain. Use the pain of accountability to give you the pleasure of achieving your new identity. And so the pain of everyone saying to you, well, you lied about that, or you just always say that, you're a dabbler, you say these things, you say these grand things and never do, may just give you the pleasure you need to achieve your goal. So tell as many people that you trust or hold it as public. Get yourself as accountable as possible and never leave the sight of a goal without doing something towards its immediate achievement. So I just want to leave with you on one final story. And it's a silly story about a scorpion and a frog. I don't remember where I heard this, but there was a scorpion that was sat on one side of the river and needed to get to the other side of the river, but it couldn't swim and it would drown itself if it got there. And suddenly this frog leaps past the scorpion and suddenly just jumps over and starts swimming a bit and gets to the other side of the river as if it was the easiest thing in the world. And the scorpion says to himself, well, I can't do that. I'm not a frog. I don't have the skills or the abilities to do it. And so another frog then comes along and says, the scorpion then stops the frog and says, hey, frog, can I just get on your back and can you give me a little journey to the other side of the river? And the frog looks at the scorpion very worried and said, well, I don't think so. I think, you might sting me and kill me. And then the frog said, I don't think I can do that. And the scorpion then said, oh, don't be so stupid. Expand your frog brain. Use your little frog brain to think about this for a second. If I sting you while I'm on your back, then you will drown and I will die too because I can't swim. And so the frog then says, okay, that makes sense. And so the scorpion then gets on the back of the frog, and the frog suddenly starts leaping across and goes across the river, and suddenly the scorpion stings the frog, kills the frog, and they both drown and die. And the only reason that the scorpion did that is because the scorpion said, the frog said just before it goes, why did you sting me? We're now about to die. And the scorpion said, because I'm a scorpion. That's what I do. And so your identity around what you do shapes exactly who you become. If you believe you are a retail investor, then you won't have access to the high net worth investment opportunities. If you identify yourself by expanding it as a high net worth investor in transition, then you will feel, act, and do different things and to get to your original goal. Then you develop a plan, and the plan I've given throughout all of these different videos, and the exact strategies that work for me, and then you hold yourself accountable to that. And so later this year, now that we're done with all of the craziness, we got some more craziness to cover. I do an annual masterclass, which I'll be doing, but I'd like you to set yourself for the goal of expanding, and just leave this video, write down how you identify yourself and how those limiting beliefs may have got you where you are right now, how you could expand that, how you could identify with that. What would you do? What different actions would you take? What types of videos would you watch? Who would your network be? What types of things would you need to do? Would you hang around in spaces with a bunch of people that are all trading and not making money and telling you quick tips? Or would you hang around with those in a group of people that have all achieved the high net worth status already and find out what they're doing differently, and whether they have long-term plans or whether they just do short-term trades? And then once you have a plan, you hold yourself accountable to that, you stick to it, and you have to stick to it on the long term. Learn, adjust, improve. And what happens from there, when you expand your belief, you take different actions. When you take different actions, you get different results. When you get different results, you expand your belief, and you end up expanding your influence of what is possible. And so that is what I'd love to leave with you. Always remember, you are alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Also, if you want to be on my mailing list, remember to go to retirementplanb.com/book. You can get a free digital copy of my book, the first published book in the world to include Bitcoin, the whole video series where I forecasted the Great Depression of the 2020s and exactly in me investing live on how I did that. You'll be on my newsletter for any future videos and future stuff, and AMAs and things that I can do. But thank you for holding me accountable. I will continue to create these daily videos as a result. So always remember, you're alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Some are going to get hurt, others are going to do really well. If you want to do well and you want others to do well, do me a favor. If you like this video, hit the like button, and YouTube will get more people to see it. But also, if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell symbol, and hit all, and YouTube will email you every single day. And as long as you're enjoying that content, stay subscribed. And I will see you. We're doing this with peace, love, and unity. I'll keep you up to date with all of the big macro changes, everything that's happening in Bitcoin and crypto. And I'll be going live again this Friday as well, and we're doing AMA on Twitter Spaces. So I'll see you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace.